morning, everyone. Really excited for you all to be here. Let's just give ourselves a quick round of applause. Yes? Yeah. Welcome in. Welcome in. Happy day 2 for the folks that were with us for that splendid, adventurous comedy store experience last night. Hope y'all enjoyed that. And then for the folks that weren't and are just getting in, welcome. Welcome to our kind of first inaugural conference, as it were. We're really excited to be here. We're really, really excited to have you all here as well. We've got a great day ahead of us. Lots of great speakers and sessions, etc. But really excited to kick things off by bringing up some of our fantastic partners who have come from really all over the country, right, to be with us here today. So really excited to hear from them and ask them some questions and hopefully have a fruitful discussion. Before we do that, though, perhaps some quick introductions are in store. So real quick, and I don't want to be the one, obviously, taking up all of the microphone time, but my name is Dylan Hoffman. I am the Vice President of Partner Success here at Subject, and I like to think I actually have the best job at the company. The reason why is because I spend most of my time working with all of our fantastic partner administrators, educators, counselors, even students, driving around and flying around the country, visiting with these fantastic folks. So it's really a privilege to be here, to be a part of this company, and to be working with you all. And then I want these 4 to introduce themselves as well. So please go for it.
Good morning. My name is Nicole Howard. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Education at Indian Prairie School District in Naperville, Illinois. It's a fairly large district, and it's a very diverse district, and we are in our first year of implementation of Subject.com.
Hi, my name is Samantha Skubal. I am the Director of Innovation and Accountability for J. Sterling Morton District 201. So we are the first district right outside of Chicago. So we're demographically very similar to a CPS type of school. We're a mostly Hispanic district, mostly underserved community, low income. And this is we're coming up on our 2nd year of using Subject. Mm-hmm. Oh, 3rd. Time flies when you're having fun.
We'll keep you honest. Yeah. Good.
Good morning. My name is Kathy Felder-Guerrero. I'm the Executive Director of Educational Services Parlier Unified. We are in the Central Valley near Fresno, California. Yes, so I'm close-ish. And we are in our 3rd year of implementation for Subject.com.
Yeah.
Hi, good morning. My name is Jaime de la Torre. I am the Director of Instructional Technology for Las Cruces Public Schools in Las Cruces, New Mexico, which is just north of El Paso. Nobody ever knows where Las Cruces is. That's why I mentioned El Paso. You're welcome. Also, nobody knows where El Paso is. Just look at the edge of Texas.
Yeah.
We are in our first year implementation of Subject.
Awesome. Yes. Well, thanks for being with us. So our CEO, Michael Velardo, who you heard from yesterday and you'll hear from continually throughout the day, has a very, very common saying that he loves to say here in the office, which is never, ever, ever be late and always try to start things early. I'm happy to say we started this session about 10 minutes early. So we actually have a little over an hour to go through our questions and have our discussion. So I've got some notes here. Please bear with me as I read them off. The first thing, though, that I want to ask you all, the first thing that I want to talk about is money, is budgets. It's no secret, right, that across the country, most districts, all districts, are facing a number of different budgetary constraints, right? Recovery funds are drying up, state budgets are tightening. There's just a lot of shifts, a lot of changes that are happening, I think, within that space. And it's forcing a lot of prioritization, right, and consolidation for you all. So something that we're really curious about, something that I want to talk to you all about is how are you navigating that shifting landscape? How are you prioritizing spend and thinking about the best and highest use of the budgets that you'll have available to you moving forward? And anyone can jump in. Yeah.
So we have, like you said, ESSER funds are drying up, but the beauty of Subject is it covers both ends, right? So you have your AP, but we're really focusing on the credit recovery. And so with that, we can use all the acronyms in California, right? But the Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant, because if we don't use it, it has to be rolled into our LCAP next year. So we prioritized credit recovery and alternative education. And with our online learning, we wrote it into our LCAP. So we have two, pretty decent funding source streams. And then in addition, looking forward to when those, either they run out or, like I said, we wrote it into our LCAP, but you also have ELOT funds. And so because we run our summer program and we make sure it's our 9 hours a day, we can build that in. So we have a continuous funding stream for the foreseeable future to cover both sides. And so even though it's credit recovery and we're using some of those federal funds now, we're able to think, outside the box down long term.
Awesome.
So we definitely were hit hard when some of the ESSER funds went away for us, and we did not have the funding to do and continue some of the programs we had begun during the pandemic that we learned were very valuable for students, including like them having some personalization, some self-paced instruction, et cetera. That requires people, and with the cutting of funds, we had to also cut some people. And so we were looking for ways to still provide that type of instruction for our students with less, which is what prompted us to look towards something like a subject.com. We were looking for a way to keep students engaged that would allow them some sort of personalization, which is sort of what this platform does. And we were also wanting to continue to reach those students who suffered a lot of learning loss during the pandemic, who just had a hard time re-engaging in the school environment, and definitely had a hard time staying in in-person classrooms all day long and staying engaged all day long. And we were just challenged by behavioral issues and a lot of SEL issues during that time. And so we were looking for a way to create almost a hybrid learning environment for them so they could spend some time in person, of course, and then some time, on the screen where they're kind of the most comfortable. And so in a lot of ways, this is kind of our solution for the money issue, because it gets after some of those priorities and it costs less than hiring additional full-time interventionists and other people.
Got it. Yeah.
I agree too, Dr. Howard, that the same sort of thing, especially in an underserved community like we have, where something like Title I funds, that's a federal fund that possibly has a chance of going away right now in our current climate, which is really scary for us because that's a lot of what we use to subsidize things like our one-to-one program and things like that. So we rely heavily on grant funding, especially federal grant funding, but similar to what's happening at Indian Prairie, we have to prioritize stuff a lot, and we were just kind of talking about this as well, because we don't have funding to kind of just spend wherever we want. We have to be very intentional about how we're funding it. We want to make sure that the program or what we're purchasing is going to be a well-rounded thing that will really ensure that our kids get the equitable experience that they deserve. And something like subject is something that is, a non-negotiable, because the last thing we want to do is keep our students back, hold our students back from graduating high school, which, is something that is huge for allowing anybody to succeed, but especially, the students in our community as well. But we also want to ensure that that degree that they're getting means something. So that's a big reason why subject has been so great for us, because the other programs that we've used in the past just weren't cutting it. What we were giving to kids in the classroom was up here, and then what kids were getting in an online environment was, down here with innovation and DOK and just rigor and all the things. So being able to really provide students with something that will not only give them the opportunity to have their high school diploma in an alternate setting, but also something that is worthwhile has been just a game changer.
Yeah. Awesome.
So our district is actually in a very weird position right now. A very busy and ongoing conversation for us is to think about high school your way for our students. And so subject does play a part in that, and so does the funding. For us this year, we were able to pay for that out of grant funds, which are no longer be available for us, and now it's going to be out of the program that I run, the direct operational budget from there. So it's a point where we need to evaluate to see what does work for our students. In our district, we also have a virtual learning academy, which I oversee, and so we already have direct instruction from teachers. However, we've seen students be very successful in subject. So if we're really, as a district, thinking about high school your way, then we have to provide different options. So while we may not know the funding sources yet, we do know that we want to provide as many opportunities for our students, and so hopefully that also goes a long way with the stakeholders. And when we talk about money and saying, hey, do we need money for a new football stadium or do we need for instruction? So hopefully that's something that is going to be beneficial in the long run.
Yeah, Jaime, you're hitting, I think, on an interesting point. Something else that I'm curious about, kind of like a part two almost, right, to this question is measuring ROI and measuring impact, right, as you're deploying these funds and as you're rethinking, how you're spending at the district level. Has that changed for you, or is that changing for you all in terms of how you're tracking things and how, again, you're measuring ROI and impact, the ways in which you're even defining, right, impact? I'm just kind of curious to hear more about that as well.
I'll jump back in. So I know our focus has always been and will always be high school graduation.
Yeah.
That's our goal. So as of right now, that's our measure for our students, especially when we talk about the students that have been struggling or been felt that they were underserved, is here's a plate of different options. Let's make sure that something off that plate works for you. So in our district, that graduation rate is really our focus when it comes to anything that we have in place.
Okay.
I can just
Yeah.
piggyback off of that. I think it is very true, and in an alternative setting. And then once we started using it for independent study in our alternative high school, then our high school got on board. How can we provide it within the school day to provide intervention for these kids so that they don't keep falling farther behind, because we are focused on graduation rate. So there's a plethora of ways we have figured out how to get a little bit, crazy with how
Yeah.
we do this, because of the way subject.com allows you to have the platform
Yeah.
and have our students switch in and out. We can get them in, we can get them recovered, we can get them out. And then so it's constantly focusing on that graduation rate and the multiple ways that we can do that to ensure that our kids are graduating from high school.
I would say for us, our focus on ROI has increased definitely since, I would say, probably 2019, 2020. Before then, it was more anecdotal, like, oh, we think these programs are great, or we've always run these and we continue to run those. We don't have that luxury anymore, so we're more intentional about sort of tagging students in the programming that they're receiving and then looking at those outcomes, right? Students who are in the programming versus similarly situated students who are not in the programming.
Okay.
And what does it look like for them as far as GPA, the level of rigorous courses they're taking, behavioral infractions, attendance, et cetera, like all the big metrics. And then we really look at it in two ways. There's the academic component, but we're also looking at sort of the SEL component. We regularly survey our students about their sense of belonging, the relevance of their coursework, because we also want to ensure that what we're putting in front of them is meaningful for them. So for us, that's another return on that investment, like however we have them sort of programmed into our spaces, that they feel like this is something that's helping them for their future. And it's been quite a journey because the students are more aware, I think, of their programming options and their ability to choose.
Yeah.
And so they're quite forthcoming and vocal about what classes they like, what they don't like, what virtual platforms they like and what they don't like. And so we're getting a lot of good feedback, and we've been trying to be responsive to that.
I love that.
Yeah, I'll just quickly add that
Yeah.
we all have always, just again, because of funding issues, for a very long time, we were the lowest funded high school district in all of Illinois. And we have, 8,000 students, so we're a pretty large district for Illinois as well. So this has been something that we've always considered, and I hate the fact that we have to decide between a football stadium and whether or not students are getting, a proper education, because it's all just so important as for whole child. So it's, unfortunate we have to have the conversation at all, but
Yeah.
we also have kind of shifted things a little bit. For example, providing a viable curriculum to students, guaranteeing a viable curriculum. We've moved our curriculum writing and things into the school day, just trying to shift things around so that we're not limiting our teachers and our students from opportunities, but just thinking things through in a little bit of a different way. So then we do have funding to fund things like what we're doing with subject.
Yeah, got it, makes sense. Dr. Howard, you hit on something kind of interesting, so I'm jumping ahead in my question queue. I want to double down on and talk a little bit more about measuring student success, right? And of course, things like graduation rates, traditional metrics, test scores, et cetera, like those things persist and are universal in nature. But I also feel like there's a shift that's underway in terms of taking perhaps a more holistic approach, right, to measuring and understanding student success and student achievement, particularly as they track towards graduation. So I'm curious, again, just kind of tugging at that thread of what you were just saying, has that changed for you at all in terms of how you measure and track student success and student achievement in your districts? What does that look like for you?
So for us, we are making a huge shift to skills-based.
Okay.
And I'm sure many of you are also making a similar shift. It's kind of, a movement in education right now, which I definitely believe in. So we're, moving, we say that we're moving from grading to learning. So having less focus on the grade book and more focus on if students are learning and allowing them to be in charge of their learning, know where they are in the learning process, things like that. And I think a big part of that too is we're shifting our assessments as well to being assessments that are authentic for students. We have a huge EL population, for example, so one of the things that we like to focus on a lot is speaking and listening, so providing students with the opportunity to show their learning in, through their voice and through discourse and things like that. So, when thinking about also, bringing it back to subject, right, like that's one of the things that's super important about using this platform is that it's not just like a bunch of multiple choice questions.
Yeah.
This platform's moving with us towards authentic assessment and authentic learning. And I think that's really the most important part, right? Like there's no one way for students to show their mastery of learning. So let's provide a lot of opportunities for students to do that so that we know that the barrier isn't the curriculum or the barrier isn't language or whatever it might be. We just really know if they're getting it or not.
Yeah, I would say similar for us. We have been really engaging student voice quite a bit more in some of our decision making. For example, our students told us that they feel sort of the set schedule for taking assessments was problematic for them because there are times when they may have 5 exams scheduled on the same day.
Yeah.
And that stresses them out because our students are very well aware of their stress levels these days. I don't know if our guys are feeling the same thing. And so they wanted the ability to talk to their teachers and say, well, can I schedule this for a different day?
Yeah.
Well, it sounds easy enough, but when you're a teacher trying to manage hundreds and hundreds of students, you don't have the ability to just, oh yeah, you 3 can take it on Tuesday. Don't share the questions with anyone else because they're not taking it until Thursday. And so our teachers were left with, we would love to be able to do that, but how do you really do that and maintain sort of test integrity? And so then we started looking for more flexible assessment solutions for them, including things like, well, some of the students can take some of the assessments associated with, subject in some of their courses. And they've been really good about being flexible with us in the way we want to use the platform. So thank you guys for that. Because I know sometimes we come with some crazy ideas out of the box. But that's just one example of us just sort of trying to be true to what our students are asking for. They also wanted to have time in class that didn't have an agenda, meaning, you know how teachers have lesson plans and objectives for the day? They felt like they just needed to go to class sometimes and just learn some stuff, right? Or re-ask some questions. And so we built in some flex blocks into our schedule for them to just go to your teacher of choice and then work on whatever you feel you need to work on during the week. So we're really trying hard to do that and trying to find tools to make that easier for our teachers.
Love it. Just FYI, we love crazy ideas, by the way. So we encourage that, please.
So we're taking the exact opposite approach. We don't care about student voice. I'm joking. Just kidding. I'm just kidding, y'all. No, I think so we, in running the virtual academy, we collaborate with all the campuses. Our students that are receiving instruction through the virtual academy are still considered a home student for whatever campus it is. And so we have to collaborate with the counselors a lot, and I think a lot of those conversations have increased this year. And I'll tell you that that's a little bit of a product of what we've been trying to do with our academy. So the virtual academy in our district has been around for more than 10 years. So even pre-pandemic, what I was sharing with somebody is we had students who went into the virtual academy during the pandemic and haven't come back yet. And that's because for some of them, they did nothing for 2 years. In the last few years, they've done nothing. So we're almost like going and knocking on doors and finding them and saying, hey, what's going on? And so those conversations have increased for us this year. And that's where we really get to understand what the students feel they need. For some of them, it is working from home. For some of them, it is working at campuses. And then the last part of that is our district also does offer the flex opportunities. So students go into the building for 2 periods, and then they go home for the other 4 or 5 periods, whatever it might be. We have students who work on all specific content on one day or whatever it might be. We have students who get an entire week's worth of work done in 2 days. And so just that flexibility is important, and that doesn't come unless we actually ask the question, what do you need and how do we help? So our counselors, I really do credit that our counselors are the ones that are having some really powerful conversations to be able to understand that student voice and how important it is. The exact opposite of what I said at the beginning.
Totally.
It's hard to be the last one. It's like ditto, 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 ditto. But kidding aside, it is really about student voice. And I think it's flipping the narrative for the adults that are in the building that are supporting these kids. And so if we allow the students to have their voice, we also have to have the supportive adults in the room to be able to goal set with them to make sure they're on track. And it is our counselors and it's also our teachers, but it is flipping that narrative from the teacher being the expert to let the platform do the learning and support the students as they're working through, and then figuring out those gaps, whether it's English language, scaffolds that are needed, or special education needs, or SEL needs. The teacher still is an important part. We can't just stick them in front of a computer, but they do have a voice, and they're very, very loud with their voice, especially since coming back off of the pandemic, which we love, because then we can make adjustments. And I'm another one of those crazy ones that's always saying, we need to do this, this, and this. Can you make it happen? So.
The answer is yes, by the way. Yeah. Y'all are hitting, I think, on a really interesting point and something else that I wanted to make sure we spent some time discussing, which is innovation, right? Just broadly within the classroom, within the district. What I'm curious about, because I do feel like, and I'm sure we've all felt this, we all know this, there's an inherent tension to a certain extent, right? In terms of innovation, the need to change, the need to continue to evolve, but also, maintaining integrity and rigor and all those types of things, right, that are a bit more rooted in tradition. And so something that I'm curious about is, how do you all champion change within the district, knowing there's all these stakeholders and all these sometimes competing priorities, right? Like, how do you get that done? How do you start that conversation and see it through to the end?
Well, that's a funny one, because we kind of have this saying, right, where, yes, we believe in innovation, just not too much.
Yeah, yeah.
People get really excited about the conversation and the possibilities,
Right.
but the implementation of that and what it looks like, it makes some people afraid, especially teachers in the classroom. Like, how does this change my practice, or how does this change who I am to my students? And so I feel like the head is willing, but the heart is sort of like, I don't know if I can let that go,
Yeah.
right, when it comes to my classroom spaces. So we've been taking it slowly, actually. We've been trying to ensure that they see the technology as sort of an enhancement and not a takeover. And we're also very careful just about that balance. And I was talking to someone, I can't remember who it was, about there are certain groups of students the teachers are more willing to let go of than others, right? So if you've been a challenge to their instruction because maybe you're a discipline issue or you just are having a difficult time learning, they're easy to say, yeah, go ahead, that kid can go out, put that kid in a virtual course, that's great. But the high performers who may say they want a different option, they're just like, oh, no, they can't. They need to stay in this type of a classroom, because what will happen if you let them go out, it'll be too easy or something for them. And so we're also sort of battling just that belief in what students are capable of and what they need, and distinguishing between sort of a student who prefers a certain learning style versus a student who needs a certain sort of, instructional style or approach. And so it's been navigating those spaces and talking to teachers and just developing their understanding of how the technology enhances and how it supports, and it doesn't have to take over or replace. And it's not just for some students, right? It can be appropriate for all students in a certain capacity, if that makes any sense.
Totally.
So, as the director of innovation, I deal a lot with this sort of thing, right? And I mean, I've been in this role, I think, 7 years now. And so we have about 700, a little over 700 teachers in our district. So rolling something out to that many people can be challenging. So something, and I've done many large rollouts of technology, including subject and other things. But for me, what the biggest thing that has been successful has been just getting teachers on board at the ground level, and just ensuring that again, we're talking about student voice, but teacher voice as well, and having them not only be bought in, but a part of the process and a part of the journey, so that I know that it's not only something that I feel like is best for our kids and our students, but I have people who are, in the classrooms every single day who are going to ultimately have to do this with our kids, and be bought in as well, who are also at that ground level too. So I think that has been great. And then, what you said, Dr. Howard, as well, is like really getting a balance between, having a tech pedagogy. We've said those words before, I'm sure all of you have, but really knowing when technology is appropriate and when it's not. And for us, access to technology, that's a big thing that I feel very strongly about, creates equity for our students. So having access, no access to any sort of technology within the classroom, to me, does a disservice to our students. Not only because of all the things that technology can offer, but also just having that exposure to things that they might see. We're a Microsoft district, for example, and so, not seeing anything Word or Excel or any of like that sort of thing before, getting into the world, like that to me is a disservice. So I feel like we come at it from kind of two angles. And then, again, something like subject is like helpful because of how it aligns with what we are expecting our teachers and what our teachers are expecting our kids to do. So I think that is a huge piece of really buying teachers into, is saying like, yeah, we always talk about this, like, what is the best for our community, for our kids? Will this work? And again, one of those people who says a lot of things like, please make this happen, the crazy stuff. But we want to work with companies and work with different platforms that are good for our kids.
Yeah.
And so that's, something I think that's been really successful for us.
And just to add on to that, I think it's the moving away from the one size fits all. We've been doing education the same for so many years, and so flipping it upside down, giving the kids the opportunity to be the leaders of innovation and have the adults in the room support that innovation, I think is key, because we are building our next generation with the workforce and the dual enrollment, early college and CTE. Our kids at a 1,000-kid high school have over 13 pathway options. So I mean, just that in and of itself. We love to give our kids options, but in the same part, how do you balance that with the adults in the room? Have a very supportive board. When I come in, a lot of them turn around and run the other way because they're like, oh God, she's got another crazy idea that she wants us to do. And not only did we implement subject, we also did a whole district rollover of MacBook Airs and iPads. So again, even our adults learning new platforms or relearning platforms. And then again, now we're trying this, and we're not only trying it with our high kids, but we're also trying it with credit recovery, alternative ed in high school. Might as well just do it all at once. So I say go slow to go fast, but sometimes our kids won't wait for that. And so we need to guide along and support, and I think that's where subject has come in. It's not a one size fits all, and you guys do listen to our needs so that we can still fit within that box when our kids come into the classroom, but then also help the ones who are coming in on independent study or other alternative options.
Awesome.
I think, what everybody has said is very important. One of the things that we focus on with our staff, I was mentioning to somebody that our area is kind of very humble. It's very traditional. It's a high Hispanic community, and education is still a key for a lot of them. And so we have a lot of parental support when it comes to that. But because of that, we're also traditional in many ways. And so anything that we try to implement is very slow going. And we also have to give our teachers a chance to know that they still have choice in that. So, perfect example of that is, I think one of the questions is going to be about technology implementation and guidelines. Just letting them know it's okay for you to not have technology today or tomorrow or the following day, but put some in there at some point. So literally just to understand it's the way of the world. It's what our students need. And so I think all of us are in roles that sometimes we have to literally say, this is what we're going to do, and this is why, and that's pretty much the end of the sentence, right? Okay. And then we just have to support that and be able to answer questions as they come up as to, hey, why are we doing this? Well, this is the reason. And to also provide research and understand that the way of our students, the workforce, especially for our kiddos that are in elementary right now, we have no idea what that's going to look like for them. So if we don't start preparing them now and taking those baby steps in that direction, then we're going to fail them. And the adults are smart. They understand that, they see that. They may not know how to do that for them, and that's where we come in to support and guide them as well.
Totally. We're talking about technology and technology implementation. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up AI at some point. It's going to be a big part of the day. About a year ago, we had some of you in, and we asked you kind of a pointed question around AI, which is, what do you think the role of AI should be in your districts and in learning broadly? And a lot of things have changed, right, in the last year, and things are continuing to change at an increasingly rapid rate. So I would love to just hear from you all, because it feels like with all the different district partnerships that we have, everyone has kind of their own take, right? Their own set of policies, things that they've implemented, ways in which they're thinking about it. So I'd love to hear from you all how you're thinking about AI specifically. And I'm keeping it broad intentionally. Yeah.
I mean, I talked about it. I'll jump back in. With our AI guidance, we didn't do anything specific to AI for the district. Instead, we used it as a technology tool, which is what it is now. Yeah, it's something where our staff understands that AI is out there. They don't even know that their phone is using AI. They're like, "Oh, I don't use it." Yes, you do every day, right? Even on a survey that we put out, 45% of the staff said, "I don't use AI, and I don't want my students using AI." I said, "That's cool. Do you have a phone? Because now you're lying to yourself, right?"
Yeah.
But so that's the approach that we're taking.
Okay.
And it's actually something that in the last couple of weeks we just put out what we're calling pilot guidance. And the reason for that is because it's ever changing. It might be something you would get guidance from me this week, and then 2 weeks from now, hey, by the way, this is changing now. But everything is still in that same idea, in a red, yellow, green guidance component of some days it's a tech-heavy day and some days it's not. But we're also putting it in the same platform as a calculator, which, again, a lot of us know that if a calculator, when it was put into the classroom, the kids are no longer going to learn math. That's a false narrative, right? And so AI is in the same realm. So we're just putting it out there as it's a tool that you can choose to use or not with your kiddos, although you should, because they need to know how this works in the real world.
Yeah, I'll jump in there. I could not agree more. I think holding our kids back from not having AI, again, does a disservice to them. Our job, in my opinion, as educators is to prepare students for how to navigate things like AI once they, leave us and go into whatever they're looking to do. One of the stances that I feel like I've taken, because I get this question a lot from teachers in my district, in my role, and one of the things that me and I think a lot of people that are in our district believe in is that if something you're doing in the classroom is not AI proof, then we need to rethink what we're doing in the classroom. I get a lot of, for example, no offense to the English teachers, right? I love you guys. I'm a history teacher, so we're here. But, that's a lot of who ask me the questions because of essays and things like that, right? I'm sure you guys have the same things. And, my response is, well, how are we rethinking how students are showing their learning through with AI. So that has been a lot of our conversation. I'm very against completely, not exposing students to AI and not, again, embracing it as something that is this amazing, yet scary sometimes, right, tool that we have, in our toolbox right now as educators and just as people in general. But I think we really are at a crossroads now where we have to start rethinking what we're doing in education to work with AI and not against it.
Yep.
And just to add to that, we spent a lot of time over the past year training our staff on different AI platforms just so we could get them used to what is out there and then how it can be used. Because once we can get them on board, they're more supportive of even having the students use it in class versus them being against it. And so we've seen a shift in our adults that are actually allowing the use in the classroom because now they understand, the 5 main, ChatGPT, all those other ones, showing them that it can also make their life easier with lesson plans and things like that. And so once we've gotten them on board, then I think they've been more willing to allow the students to utilize it because banning it isn't going to do us any good. We also just redid our entire tech plan, and it includes AI guidance. Although I like the word pilot, I might change it. It goes to board next week. Maybe I can see, this is why I like sitting up here. But that has allowed some sort of teeth in our policy because we have a tech implementation plan that includes that. California's behind in a lot of their board policies and things like that and about what you can and cannot do, but they have guidance. And so we want to stay on top of that so that everyone is aware and supportive of the use of it. It's not going away. We just need to learn to get on board so that we can support the use and our adults aren't afraid.
Yeah, we formed a task force in our district with teachers, administrators, and some students on it to sort of investigate the best uses of AI to leverage learning. And we're producing guidance documents and training for teachers and for students, like in the best use of that. And it was a good approach for us because, again, we did have some faculty just sort of afraid of, especially social studies and English, just what does that mean? Because already they were like, we have to revise our definition of cheating because they're using AI to cheat. And so we're like, well, let's just investigate what AI is, how it's being used, and then we'll develop those guidelines as we go along. And that's been really helpful for us. And I think what the teachers are seeing, too, is that it's just a great tool for them to personalize learning a little more for their students, provide that feedback the students have been craving for things, and just sort of go deeper in their lessons because now they can analyze between what maybe a ChatGPT put forward versus your version, and then if it makes your version different, how does that change the voice if you're talking about English? And so just thinking of different ways and prompts that they can use within their classroom to help students just go a little bit deeper in what their writings are, because that was really the biggest piece they were afraid of, the writing aspect of it. I mean, students had already found ways to cheat in math. I'm a math teacher by trade. They were already taking pictures of the problem and sending it in for somebody else to solve. And so just working around, like they have all of these tools. How can we use those so they can actually learn from them? So if you're getting a solution from somewhere else, then let's analyze that solution. Right?
Just to ask the team, isn't it funny to see people who have not used AI, meaning a teacher, and they say, hey, do this lesson for me, do this activity, and their eyes go like this. Just like the students are like, oh, this helps me too? Oh, I do like AI.
They're crafty, yeah. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so changing tack just a little bit, we've touched on it, but one thing that I do want to make sure that, again, we spend some time discussing equitable access, right, to education broadly, but particularly, I think oftentimes with the implementation of technology, of new programs and systems, it's not one size fits all, right, like you were saying, Dr. Howard. And so particularly, I think for students with diverse learning needs, with our English language learners, et cetera, how do we ensure that all of these different student cohorts, right, that the entire student population receives the same level of access, right, to these things that are being implemented and to high quality educational content? What are the different things that you all are doing to support those particular student groups?
I think for us, it was taking a look at, let me back up a little bit. One of the reasons we kind of developed just a task force in general is because there was uneven of access, right? So there were some students who were already accessing certain AI platforms because their parents either bought a subscription to something, et cetera, and then students who didn't have it. And so we had this conversation of, well, do we turn it on? Are we going to use Gemini? Do we turn on a chat? Like, what are we going to use? What's best for students? And so we looked at all of our student groups and kind of try to diagnose what their different needs would be across these various sort of applications. And we wanted to make sure that we were selecting the ones that would be of most benefit to all of our students, right? So not a one-size-fit-all, because we do have some that'll cater more toward our English language learners. We have some for our diverse needs students, but I do feel like our students with IEPs already had a lot,
Okay.
just because there's been a lot of intentional focus and there's laws around supporting those students, and there aren't as many for our EL learners. So we wanted to make sure that they also had sort of the same level of access. And then our students who just were challenged by traditional instruction, who don't have an IEP or a language need, they just weren't quite engaged. So looking at all of their needs and pulling in programming that would work for all of them, and I know we keep saying subject a lot, but
That was not scripted, I swear. Yeah.
I know, and they said, this
Yeah.
isn't just about subject, talk about everything, but it's hard because
Yeah.
subject covers so much of those needs. I mean, it really does help in a lot of different areas for our kids.
I just want to add on to that. It's a very diverse platform, right? And it's not a one-size-fits-all, but it doesn't take away from the human that's in the room with the kid. And I think that that's important to note, because it doesn't matter what platform you're using. We need those supports from an expert in English language learners. We need that support from our expert with IEPs, and so it's been a balance with staffing in order to help support those, and it's been a challenge. But we've figured out ways that we can still have the human in the room with the kids in order to meet those needs, in addition to having the platform that provides those, all of the different supports that subject does provide. I still think we need to call out, the experts that are in the room that need to help and assist with those, because sometimes you just can't remove a human, and I mean a good teacher, from that when providing those supports.
And I'll step back a little bit more broader on a general level to your question. And I think, again, this is something that I'm sure many of you feel in the room, but it's very important that we look at making content, curriculum, whatever, accessible for all students. And that's something that's really important to us when it comes to equity. So one thing that has been we've really intentionally looked at is ensuring that when we're doing curriculum writing, for example, there's an EL representative, there's a SPED representative, there's a coach, instructional coach, who is possibly a reading specialist, right? Like things like that, just intentionally putting people into these conversations so that whatever we're providing to students is accessible for all. It's not this, okay, here's the general curriculum, and now we're gonna have the EL curriculum, and now we're gonna have the SPED curriculum. We're building these things into the foundation of the class so that all students have access to it. And I think part of that, and we were talking about this earlier too, is through scaffolding, right? Having the bars high for everybody. Everybody meets this bar, but we have different scaffolds that certain students need throughout, what they're doing. And again, like going back to the subject thing, that's why this platform is so great, because it provides not only access to students to be able to, are you laughing at me? Access for students to be, again, he did not ask us to talk about this for the record, like we didn't.
Yeah.
Not to, really.
Yeah, but here we are. It's like we're at a subject conference or something. But, and I think that, there's plans hopefully moving forward to add a little bit more into there, but even just the ability to have an alternate way to even have access to the content in general has been really great for our kids. We have a lot of students who have struggles with getting to school on time because of different, needs. Maybe they have to walk their sister to school, or they have a job that they have to do, or something like that. So we've implemented a few programs since getting subject, because what we had before was just not good enough for us to be able to do that. And now that we have something that we can believe in and rely on, we can provide those options for students so that they can get that.
I think everybody's already kind of talked about it, but I'll reiterate. For us, it's been about staffing. So our staffing pattern has been very intentional to make sure that we keep the experts in the room, to make sure that we have that. I've even seen classrooms where there's 4 students and there's 4 adults, because those 4 students need specific supports, and they might not be there all day, but during that time, our district has done a very good job of that. And then just having options. I know we get phone calls from campuses who are not aware or not using any platforms like Subject. I hadn't said Subject, by the way, so there you go. You're welcome. Like Subject. But they'll reach out and ask us, hey, we have this need for this kid. What do you all think? And I, by far, am not a counselor. I would never claim to be one. But we turn into that in that moment of being able to say, hey, we have this, and this, and just what do your kids need? And so it's nice to be able to have those options with the right staffing patterns. I think, like I mentioned before, our community is very not necessarily one size fits all, but it's a lot of that, because it's a lot of the same people that are there. And then our staff is also bought in like that. We have a lot of local staff that are from the area, and they want to see their kids succeed, so their hearts are in it. So it makes it easy sometimes to be able to say, hey, I need you to help out this kid. I got you, and they're there.
Yeah. You just hit on a key word, which relates to the next question I want to ask, which is about community and parent engagement, right? So something that I'm curious about, because as we know, schools they have to be deeply connected to their communities. We have to think about how kids are being supported when they're not at school, but when they're at home. And I know there's lots of different policies about letting students continue to work at home, under parental supervision, et cetera. So for you all, what steps have you taken to strengthen partnerships with families, with community members, when thinking about supporting student success? How are you thinking about that right now?
I'll jump back in. So again, with our virtual academy, something that we did different this year is we brought all the families in, which for some of them, they were not used to that. When I was talking to somebody else about our students that are full-time virtual, a lot of them have anxiety about being in the building, or they've had issues with bullying or medical concerns, whatever it is. So they're not families that typically come into the building or would want to, but bringing them in and establishing some kind of routine and schedule for those kiddos. And it's something where the community is able to trust us and say, hey, we have the best interest for your kid. If they're in middle school, my job is for them to graduate. And so we're able to do that with them. And I see that happening a lot in our district. We have specific times and dates where we're bringing in as many families as we can. Our social media awareness, we try to keep everything very accessible for everybody. And then just ensuring that we're providing enough information for parents to be aware without overwhelming them. Just because I know I get text messages every single day from my kid's school, and I'm like, that's okay. I don't need to know about the photos happening today and tomorrow and the following day, right? So being very intentional about what we're putting out specifically for their overall success and in their academics.
One thing that I'll add, Jaime brought up trust. So this might be similar to in other underserved communities as well, but we don't have as much parental involvement as we would hope. And a lot of that is due to schedules and, a lot of our parents who work 2-3 jobs or have other obligations that they have to take care of. So they really put a lot of trust in us to teach their kids and do right by their kids, which I feel like for me, it almost gives us gives me more of a want to do what's right by the kids even more, because the teachers or the parents aren't the ones that are asking for it, because they're just like, you guys got this, and we have to again do right by the parents too. So we don't have as much parental involvement as I would want, but because of that, we try to get into the community a lot. We try and, like you're saying, communicate as much as we can, provide cultural opportunities, things like that, to get our parents in as much as they can. But working from home, things like that, that's why going back to the funding conversation, it's so important for us to provide that sort of option for our kids, because they don't have it when they go home. In many cases, the computer that our students are using is the family computer, the one we give them. So it's so important for us to be able to give them the access to technology, just in general, the actual physical access to technology, because that's just not something that a lot of our families have. So that's something we have to consider just all the time. It goes really beyond the classroom.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just add, just really quick, it is important for access and it is important for parent education. We build into our budget, if the families don't have access at home, they can check out a router from the district office. And so providing the access is key, because if we want them to have, really the anytime, anywhere learning, we have to be willing to support that and make sacrifices on our budgeting and in order to support that. We do a lot of in-person, we do a lot of how-to videos that are posted, so we try to meet the needs of the parents where they're at and then when they can gather the information, and sometimes it's just in short snippets. You can't get 3,000 kids, parents into a gym so you can train them on Parent Square, Aries, all of that stuff, but if you can give them the little how-to videos so that they can check their kids' grades, things like that. And so that access, and then our secondary, our laptops go home with them, our iPads and our MacBook Airs, and so then again you're increasing the access and providing them with the opportunity to work when it's best for them. And then, like you said, it might be the student device that is the family's device sometimes, for at least accessing internet and things like that. And we have to be mindful of that with our families.
No, that's critically important. Yeah, we also make sure that every single student has access at home and at school, so all our students, even the kindergartners, have devices. And our parental engagement, I think, is really strong, especially K through 8. Okay. Tapers off a little bit in high school, but for the most part, we try to have a blend of opportunities. We have formal opportunities for them to be involved in strategic planning, school improvement planning, et cetera. And then we have more informal opportunities for them to be on advisories around specific questions like the use of cell phones in the classroom, SEL, mental health awareness. So we try to provide all these opportunities for families to give us feedback and to be involved in the decisions that we're making. And then we try to make sure that they have a platform to just shoot us questions whenever they need to. And our superintendent will often have coffees, like a community coffee, invite them in, very informal so that people feel comfortable in that space and sort of speaking up.
Yeah, great. Okay, well, my final question is kind of a broad one in nature. I like to always talk about wish lists. So thinking about the future of your districts, right? Thinking about the types of things that you're talking about. Gosh, it'd be so great if we had X, Y, or Z for our students, our educators, our community members, whoever it might be. Maybe tell us a little bit about that. Like if you could have anything at all, what would it be? What are the kinds of things that you really want to see happen in the next 5 to 10 years?
Oh, I'll start with that one. I'll borrow from something that was said earlier, like the school your way idea. We would love to see a full continuum of educational experiences for students, across all the grade levels, all the way from full traditional classroom experience to academy, like virtual academy options, because we don't have a virtual academy in my district right now. So you can take an online class here or there, but there's no mechanism for students who want that most of their day or even like a part of the day outside of a few alternative programs that we're running. So we'd really like to be able to see students opt into sort of the best version of learning for them and provide more flexibility with time, right? We'll make learning the constant, like here's the proficiency level we expect, but how you get there should be more about student choice, kind of negotiated with their parents and the teacher.
Love that.
I was so cued into what you were saying that I forgot that I needed to talk. I would say just from a general level, I think for me, the biggest wish list item would be staffing. We run a very thin margin when it comes to the ratio, I guess, like student to staff, especially our administrative staff. We're very, slim in our our administrative staff. So I think, to the point that I think you guys were making earlier, like people are very impactful for kids, like people make a difference, educators make a difference to be able to provide, all this stuff, subject, all these other tools that we're talking about aren't the thing, right? They're the thing that helps the thing happen, right? So the teachers and the educators, like, they're the thing, and the curriculum that they put forward. So that would be, for me, something that I would be a wish list item, is just getting more people to work with smaller groups of kids and be able to create these, programs and things that will help us even move even forward even more.
I think, well, the one thing I know we can't give is time, right? Because that's my wish list. We've got all these things that we want to implement, and you can't find the time sometimes just to let our staff be immersed in them and learn them so that they feel comfortable using them, because we all know that the teacher is an expert, but sometimes they don't like to do new things. And so when we give them the time to learn new things, I think that would be, how do we build in that during our school day and our school year so that we can get better at some of the things that are coming our way versus just giving them that base level introduction and then saying go, because I think we do that a lot. There's so many things going on in education, we don't give our teachers enough time to learn it and then effectively implement it. And so the coaching, the professional development, I think that that's key in terms of ongoing support. Yeah, and my plug to you guys is when Juan is up in our section a lot, because we say we need this, and he comes and he knows our staff, he knows our administrators, and he does. So yes, it is a subject plug, but we have to train our teachers and we have to listen to them. And when we're trying to get our staff on board, we need to take the time and invest in our people in order to get that. And I would like more personalized learning, just as the rest of them have been saying. We do need to listen to our students. They know what they want, and we're training them from a young age to speak their mind and be educated, and so we need to meet them where they're at.
Well, first of all, if I get any wishes, I have to ask for 3 more wishes, right?
There you go.
So
Yeah.
that's
I
the first
was
thing.
hoping someone would say that.
Thank you. I think, especially when we talk about the professional learning, that is probably the most important thing. If we would somehow figure out a way to continue to do that. And that's just not our district, our state, it's across the country. I think teachers and educators in general, having the time to become the experts and truly be the experts, that's how you can really have students buy into that. So anytime that would be built in, I don't know if subject can build in some more time, but if you can, then we'll plug you also a little bit more in there.
Okay, we'll add that to our roadmap.
There you go,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
And then staffing, as always. You know, manpower is important, and so everybody's talked about all that, so.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. Well, plenty more discussions to be had, right, throughout the course of the day. But for the moment, please join me in thanking our panel for being up here. Yeah.